Have you ever had two or three traumatic things happen to you in a very short period of time? Did you think you needed therapy? What if the answer was an ancestor ritual or opening to your gifts as an interdimensional shaman? For ideas about this and more, come on inside the Mother Tree Network. So we are back on the Mother Tree Network with our fabulous guest, Rosemary Reyes, an artist and a shamana with some Dominican heritage, New York City native. Welcome back, Rosemary.
So I'm having so much fun. Thank you for having me again.
Oh, I'm glad you're having fun. That's great. All right. So now let's talk about the shamana part of you. On the show, we had Dr. G. Love Robinson, and she was talking about being intergalactic royalty. So, I love that. You know, it's like kind of expanding our sense of who we are beyond, as you mentioned earlier, this narrow single prism that we might or narrative we might have of ourselves. So, tell me about yourself. How do you feel like as a shamana? Like, you know, did you have an initiation? What happened to bring that into your awareness?
Mhm. Sure. So it was about 10 years ago now. Yeah, actually it'll be 10 years this year. I was I was in my Saturn return. I had just lost my really fancy New York job,
Mm,
got laid off, and was kind of in having an existential crisis of sorts.
mhm.
And decided to move to New Orleans on a whim. Um, New Orleans really seduced me. New Orleans actually summoned me in a very clear way. Like at one point, I was receiving emails that were like, New Orleans is waiting for you. Like it was just like, like weird advertisements, but it was like the message was coming in clearly.
Wow.
So yeah, so I listened, and I moved there. And as soon as I moved there, I started to have these kind of jarring experiences.
Mm,
Um, and one of them was, and this is like a little bit of a warning for your audience, around gun violence, anybody
mm,
who's experienced maybe like skipped, a couple seconds.
mhm.
But I had moved in by myself for the first time and had someone try to break into where I was living, armed.
Oh,
And I was luckily with a friend, and my intuition like kicked in. I knew that we were in kind of dangerous territory, and nothing ended up happening, thank goodness. But that was enough of a shakeup, to start. My nervous system was starting to kind of crack. And then that was followed by another kind of life-threatening experience where I had bought something from someone on Craigslist, and that person delivered the object and then started to follow me around the city. Um, and so the way it actually, I'll share this because it connects to like my belief in spirit being awakened. Um, so I was riding my bike to work one day, and I would take the same path every day. And there was a man on the street, um, a Black New Orleanian man, who he seemed like maybe he was kind of in and out of an altered state. Maybe it was substance related, but maybe not. I don't really know. But he stopped me on the street while I was riding my bike and was like, "You're being followed." And I didn't really know what to make of it at that point, because I was like, "Oh, okay," and then I got to work, and then one thing led to the next, and a few details came together where like you have a realization.
yeah.
And then like, oh, you're like, oh my God. And then you remember there's like a white car, that's been sitting outside of your house every day. And like, And so I started to piece everything together and realize that I had a stalker. So those two instances really shook my relationship with reality, just because of the fear I was living with
Mm,
at that point.
mm, mm.
And I remember I was sitting on my couch one day, kind of in the middle of navigating this intensity and feeling alone because I was living in a new city, and feeling my relationship to reality stretching,
Yes.
but also breaking.
Splintering is what came to mind.
Yes, exactly. And I remember there was, through that splinter, there was a doorway to deep instability, to, I don't, the word insanity is coming up, and you
Hmm.
can interpret that however you want.
Hmm.
But there, I remember just being in a hazardous zone.
Yes.
And so that moment was like the first time in my adult life where I'd experienced that. And then I started to ask people in town for a therapist, right? So I'm like, okay, let me get some help.
Yes.
So everybody was like, I think three people I asked all recommended me to one person, Dr. G, Gerald Robinson. And,
Oh, who
and
was a guest on this show?
who
Okay.
was a guest on this show who you just referenced, and who is one of my, I consider her a godmother at this point. I consider her one of my
Mm.
mentors. Um, she has held so much for me, and continues to support me in all kinds of ways. And so at this point, I'm looking for a healer to help me out, and bring me back from this edge,
Yes.
or in this case, take you deeper into the edge, to get through
Get through
it.
the door.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what Dr. G did. I had my first session with her, and I remember being in a completely altered state after our 90-minute intake. And I didn't really know what I had just experienced. It was like, on the surface, a very conventional therapy. What's going on with you? What are you struggling with? But on, again, an interdimensional level, there was a lot being opened. And the first assignment she gave me was to do this African ritual, that I had never done any ritual before that. I hadn't really had any relationship to spirituality. One of my roommates was like leaving like rose quartz in my room and like little Reiki pamphlets and like guiding me toward it. But I was skeptical
Hmm.
as a New Yorker.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, whatever. What are crystals? Like, okay. Um, and Dr. G like kind of helped really, really steward a profound belief in a multidimensional existence.
Mm.
So she gave me this ritual to do that involved water, and taking the water to your front door, and sprinkling the water and invoking your ancestors for protection. So at the time, I had I had just come out of a relationship with somebody that I was like, it was not healthy. And she was in my dreams all of the time. She was just like, I was having these repeating dreams with her, and I was like, this is not good. Like, so one of my prayers during the ritual was for my ancestors to protect me in my dream life. So fifth night of the ritual, nothing's really happened yet. Mind you, I'm terrified when I'm doing the invocation for my ancestors. Like, there's something in me that's just like very afraid to engage magic. I just like was very, very terrified because I could feel the power, right? And the unknown aspects of it were very daunting. Um, so the fifth night, I do the ritual, I go to bed, and I have a dream where my ex is in the dream, and we're like about to start kissing, and I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And then all of a sudden I lean in and she disappears. And I look over and there is a whole crew of people, brown people that look like me at the door. I mean, there was at least 2 dozen. And they were like, feed us, we're hungry. And I woke up and I was like, uh-oh, what did I just open?
Wow. They came through. Hey, gorgeous. Aminata here. Are you coming to the Ancestors Are Calling You workshop? I want to see you there. We're going to go deep on ancestor healing and liberation. If you are someone who has great love for your ancestors, you need to come. If you're someone who has difficult ancestors, people who have caused harm to you or to others, you need to come. If you're someone who wants to have more support, guidance, protection for your children, or clarity about your soul life purpose, your ancestor connection has all of that for you and more. So come to our workshop. Hope to see you there. Just go to dramandakemp.com/ancestors. dramandakemp.com/ancestors.
And that was the beginning. That was really truly the beginning for me. And I started to really lean on these practices to find peace. And of course, it's nonlinear. So sometimes, often it would create more disturbance before I could get to the peace. But once I discovered an interdimensional life, I took the red pill, there was there's no going back after you take the red pill. And so my relationship to being a shamana has really been to embed it in everything I do, even if it makes what I do harder, even if it makes what I do more challenging and challenges me more, and even if it inhibits conventional success, like even if it takes longer
Mm.
to get to arrive at a destination of any kind, because you're deciding to really engage interdimensionality, it's what I've committed myself to. So I don't necessarily sit down and have clients where I'm facilitating healing for them one-on-one or anything like that. I do organize, as a part of my art practice, celebrations, dance parties and workshops and healing circles and public things, and activations is what I like to call them. Um, and um, and it's all based on the shamanic teachings that you and I have apprenticed in, the old school pillars of indigenous medicine, the elements, how to engage Pachamama, the cycles, the planetary cycles, all of that beautiful, really, really rooted, deep earth medicine. And that's why, the shows are all these are my first public offerings. Let me start with the elements. Let me start with the basics.
Yes. Wow. So, um, so there's messages or communications with your ancestors, with your human lineage, right? And I
Mhm.
and I just want to know, what about communications from your cosmic lineage? Some people might be getting more of that. I mean, for a while, whenever I said ancestors, what I really felt was trees, and I was like, "What is wrong with me?" That that was more immediate than my biological human beings. So
Right.
so I wonder for you, do you? Uh, I guess how does that strike you, or where does that resonate for you?
Yeah. Great question. Yeah, I think that there is a part of me that likes being very literal. I'm a Taurus, so I'm also very earthly in that way where I like connecting with my grandmothers or being like, Mama, what do you think of this? Like, so I've developed and been nourishing that relationship to the other side, to like a literal human lineage. But I feel very connected to the stars as well. And one of my sacred gifts is to channel messages from star systems. And I think, like specifically Sirius, I don't, I've connected to my star family a handful of times, but I don't have a specific origin or name for where, who my star family is. Um, but I really, the sky and like the night sky and I'm getting chills. The constellations and the movements of just the cosmos is something that I've been so thrilled by from the time I was very young. Like I remember the unit where you learn about the planets, like,
Yes.
and then you decide to like make a styrofoam planet for the
Yes.
unit. And like that was like I was enthralled by learning that that was our reality. And I'm still very much, it still excites me in that way to look up at the night sky and feel um our intergalactic existence. And so, there's a human lineage aspect, but then there's like the cosmic lineage that is just like I'm so passionate about. And of course, there's certain animals and like I love rivers. I love like just like a sweet creek, the sound of a creek. And that feels really ancestrally guided for me. And
Well, can we get back to Sirius?
yes.
Because I know you're a Taurus and I'm a Virgo. We love Earth. And
Yeah.
um, I want to talk about Sirius because wait, is Sirius referenced in like the Dogon people?
Yes. Sirius feels like a very accessible point is my how I would estimate,
Mm-hmm.
based on my experience. Sirius, and also, in the work that we were doing in the container we were in these retreats we were going on together, um, Dr. G engages Sirius, right, in her medicine. And so that was another access point. So it seemed like they were very much our allies in what we were trying to do ritualistically on the planet for
Mm-hmm.
ascension.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also think that in communicating with them, they have a very specific cadence, and a very specific, and channelers they imprint into the messaging, right? So everyone has their own signature, but then there's the larger Syrian signature of they speak in lyrics and in poems, and like so much of the popular music on planet Earth, a lot of it is not a lot of it, but there's a good percentage of it, I would estimate, that is of Syrian origin. Um, and because that's they like to communicate in that way with the human population. So like one of the refrains that they would tell they that they tell me is don't go chasing waterfalls. Um,
Oh,
which is obviously TLC song, but I believe is like whoever wrote those lyrics was connecting with Sirius.
oh,
I know that Erica Badu, I think, openly engages with Sirius in her songwriting, or has, and identifies as someone that I believe, if I'm not mistaken, identifies as somebody that's from, a Syrian that's come to planet Earth and in human form. Um,
and I want to ask you so people know before you moved to New Orleans, you said you had a fancy New York City job. So can you just give a sense of like what were you doing professionally before you made this turn?
um, so I have always been in the arts.
Hmm.
I've always worked in the arts, my professional life. And I was working at the Juilliard School, and they were starting these programs abroad, and I was managing that expansion, um, which also felt like a weird colonization of sorts, of like, and now we're going to take our elitism to different places all over the world,
Yep.
and so I had, and I continued to work and still do on like a freelance basis, in a more like admin capacity, supportive, in the art nonprofit space, and worked for the Department of Cultural Affairs of the city on like a community development project, and tried out all of these different avenues of like, how can I make something meaningful of my gifts and like be in art, right? But I realized then that I really just needed to be making more art. And so now I'm kind of immersed myself full time, which comes with its own challenges. But
Yes.
art has always been the vehicle for me.
Yes. So interesting. Rosemary, if people want to see your art or if they want to get to know you a little better, how can they follow you or be in touch with you?
So right now, Instagram, even though I'm not very active at the moment, is probably the best way to reach me, or to see what I'm up to. I'll usually share anything that I'm doing on there, and will promise to be better about sharing more of my artwork on my Instagram page, which is at Mermami, 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 and that's my handle. So you can find me on Instagram.
All right, y'all. We'll see you the next time.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. That is a wrap. It has been so good to be with you today, gorgeous. If you hear anything on this podcast that you think would help a friend or a family member, please pass it on and leave us a review. Leave us some stars. It helps us to know what is impacting people. I'm Aminata Desert Rose Plant Walker Firewoman, and you are gorgeous. See you next time.